far. And all right, we're live. Welcome to the July 2016 edition of Ask aois21 on the 21st. I'm Keith F. Shovlin, publisher and chief creative of aois21, here to take your questions about writing, editing, publishing, marketing, basically anything about what goes into making a book. I'm here to answer your questions. I've been running the aois21 publishing company for the past 2.5 years. So we've dealt with a lot of different authors in that time. We've dealt with several different types of books. So any questions you might have, be sure to send them in. We're on Twitter at aois21. You can tweet to us with the hashtag AskAois21, or you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/aois21 or our website, www.aois21.com. Now, if it's your first time joining us and you're wondering why I'm looking aside from time to time, because we are simulcasting this both on YouTube here and Periscope here. I'm trying to figure out where the camera is. Boop, Periscope, and boop, YouTube. So here on YouTube, questions will come up in the group chat on the right side of my screen. On Periscope, questions can pop up at the bottom of my screen. So any questions you might have, feel free to send them. Talk to me about what you're reading. It's July, it's summer months. Kids are off school, they got summer reading lists. What's on those reading lists this year? It's been years since, oh man, what did I have to do in high school reading? Oh boy, I can't even remember. It's been so long ago. God, it's been 15, 16, 17 years since I've had to do a summer reading list. I remember reading on my own. I was reading things like Thomas Paine's Common Sense during the summertime. I was reading Utopia by Thomas More. A lot of those came after I read 1984, my summer, over winter break of my senior year. I read 1984 on my own, and it really pushed me to open my eyes to a lot of other things to read, the whole idea of, maintaining language and not letting things slide by being, without not being a good reading person. Like I had read for years, but now I really decided to go after it with vim and vigor. And I was on a trip with my family, and we stopped at one of the outlets along the way and went into a bookstore and had to figure out one book that I wanted to grab. I mean, I'd had a couple books with me, but the opportunity to get another book, and I saw a book called Teaching Democracy by Professor John Minahan from Brown University. Now, it was not exactly a well-known book, but it's one that actually ended up having a great effect on me because I just finished reading 1984. So it was, what it was Professor Minahan had taught a class on democracy at Brown University. And basically this book was just all of his notes and lesson plans, what he planned to do with each class, and then what actually happened. He notes of the discussions, the conversations and things, as well as the lengthy reading list he put together for that class. That was back, obviously, when college courses it was perfectly fine to have 15 or 16 books on your reading list. When I was in college, it was kind of poo-pooed to have more than 5. And when I was in grad school, it was pretty much 1 or 2 tops. Because, well, you had a lot of instances where you would have a book on the reading list and you'd only have to read 1 chapter, and the books would be expensive as get out. So, but that's, college bookstores. They may tend to drive the price up a little bit. So, so then I read Teaching Democracy because my mind was just right at that point, having read 1984. And so then I took that reading list that was in the back of the book and just hit at it. And I read Cultural Literacy by E.D. Hirsch. I read more Thomas Paine. That's where I ended up reading Thomas More off of that list that following summer. I read The Prince by Machiavelli. I read Mein Kampf by Hitler. I read Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx. That was an interesting trip to the bookstore the day I purchased both of those books. I wanted to make sure I purchased both of them together because they're on such opposite ends of the political spectrum. But the thing is, to the person working the store, I don't think they realized those were the opposite ends of the political spectrum. I thought they may not have been that smart about it because they just looked at me like something was up. Teenage boy picking up Marx and Hitler. Yeah. But, I read through them. Yeah. I can tell you, you take the word bourgeois out of the Communist Manifesto, you use 50% of the book right there. And, oh, God, Mein Kampf. Thing's a doorstop. Okay, but thing is, what's important is these are all stories. That's what every book is, from even nonfiction. It's all stories, and they're all important that they get out there. They're all important that they get shared, and that's why I started aois21 Publishing. That's why I'm a writer myself. I've written 3 books now on my own a novel, Post-Soliloquy, a novella, Life's Penance, and a sports memoir built off a blog called 48 Game Misconduct. I had stories I wanted to tell, and I have more stories I want to tell. But more importantly, right now, I'm helping other people to tell their stories with aois21. And so I'm here broadcasting the 21st of every month at 8:30 p.m. to help other people tell their stories. And currently, from what I can see on both YouTube and on Periscope, we have nobody watching. But of course, after this is done, this video will get saved on YouTube. People can go ahead and check it out anytime, because I tried to share useful information on it, not just here to answer questions, because, if I was just sitting here waiting for questions to be answered all the time, it'd be a rather boring video, wouldn't it? So let's see, we are currently broadcasting. It's been shared on Twitter, Periscope, YouTube, Facebook. You tweet to us with the hashtag #Aois21. If I look at that now, I see the notes about it. And currently no new questions. Okay. So I know a lot of people are probably trying to watch other things. Is baseball on? Thank goodness for baseball. We had the All-Star break last week. It was the quietest time in sports in the entire country. Tonight's also the final night of the Republican National Convention in Cleveland. The Republican nominee, Donald Trump, will be speaking in about half an hour, I think. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch. And that's a man who's written a few books. And in the case of his most famous book, Art of the Deal, it was in the news a lot this week because the ghostwriter that helped him write the book, Art of the Deal, came out. Usually you never know about who the ghostwriter is. You don't know the person's name. In most cases, you don't even know that that person used a ghostwriter. I know when I read My Life by Bill Clinton, it was pretty easy to tell that he had a ghostwriter, because the way it's written is not the way someone normally writes a book. When you have a ghostwriter, they try to keep it in the voice of the person that is writing the book. So in the case of My Life by Bill Clinton, the whole book was written pretty much as Bill Clinton talks. Well, you can go ahead and write that book. I doubt it'd be that interesting, though. So in the case of My Life, it's just written as Bill Clinton talks. So it's very noticeable that the ghostwriter just sort of sat down with Clinton and had Clinton tell him all these stories. And whenever there was, obviously probably had Clinton's timeline, important points, and was able to ask about certain points. What do you remember about growing up in Hope? What do you remember about going to Georgetown? What do you remember about meeting Hillary? What do you remember about, and just let him talk for hours and hours and just write it all down and edit it and move it around. And of course, knowing Clinton and how most people talk, jumping from tangent to tangent. So I don't know the names of who the ghostwriters were on Clinton's book, because although Clinton has admitted that he did use a ghostwriter, he's never said, and I've never seen it said who they were. And that's the way it's supposed to be. They're the ghostwriter. In fact, there's a movie a few years ago starring Ewan McGregor where he was a ghostwriter for the memoir of the former Prime Minister of the UK, played by Pierce Brosnan. He was supposed to be a stand-in for Tony Blair. And Ewan McGregor's character has no name. He's always introduced as your ghost. He calls himself your ghost whenever he's talking to somebody, but no one ever calls him by a name. And there actually isn't a name for him in the credits. So he's just the writer. But in the case of what got me on this tangent here, in the news this week, Donald Trump had a ghostwriter that helped him with several of his books, with Art of a Deal especially, was really the big one that came up, because that ghostwriter came out and said, I am sorry that I ever worked with Donald Trump and that I wrote a book that is so favorable to him, because this writer now feels that his work on writing Trump's book has helped get Trump to where he is as a nominee. I'm not trying to be political here. I'm not saying anything specifically negative about Donald Trump, although, well, there are things to be said negative about both candidates this year. In fact, all candidates, both the major ones, Clinton for the Democrats or Trump, or the third party ones, Johnson for the Libertarians, Stein for the Green. I'm not sure who's the Constitution nominee yet, but so on and so forth. But, pardon me, my throat was getting parched. But the ghostwriter came out and said that he was sorry and he would no longer collect any royalties, and he feels ashamed for his work on Trump's book. And of course, that was followed with a cease and desist letter from Trump's lawyer, basically saying you will cease talking about our client and never speak of him again. And by the way, you are to return to us any royalties you made off of the book. Yeah. Now, another Trump ghostwriter was also in the news for someone who worked with him on another one of his books, was just announced yesterday as the person who worked with Trump's current wife, Melania, to write her speech that she gave on Monday night, which was rightfully called out for plagiarism. Because it had a whole paragraph that was cribbed from Michelle Obama's convention speech 8 years ago. So you had in 1 week, basically a full week, you had two of Trump's ghostwriters be exposed. One ghostwriter on their own volition, and the other because of a major mistake in helping to draft a political speech. Now, that person has not been fired, even though they plagiarized for the speech. Melania, for the first couple of days, was claiming that she had written it on her own. And then they were even trying to say that it wasn't plagiarized at all, and tried to blame it on either Hillary Clinton or My Little Pony or a couple other sources. But yeah, that's beside the point. They finally fessed up to it, and in doing so, let me know that this ghostwriter had helped Donald with one of his books. So that's very odd that in the midst of this campaign that you would find out who the ghostwriters are. And like I said, ghostwriting is pretty much you get paid for it, and that's pretty much your thanks because your name is not on it. But in the literary circles, in the publishing houses, they know who these ghostwriters are, and they have them on call in case there's someone else's book that needs a ghostwriter. Say, any one of the current world leaders. As far as I'm aware, President Obama wrote both of his books, The Audacity of Hope and The Dreams of My Father, and didn't need a ghostwriter, but you can't be sure. And of course, there will be a third book coming from him after his presidency is done, because that's what's expected of our post-presidencies for the time to work on the memoir. I know when President Grant left office, basically all of his time after his time left office was consumed with him working on his memoir. President George W. Bush he was honest that he worked with a ghostwriter on his book, Decision Points. And of course, I mentioned how Clinton used a ghostwriter from My Life. And I think Winning at All Odds, was that the name of Bush Seniors? I can't remember off the top of my head. I have them. They're currently in a box because it just moved. If you notice, if you've watched previous months, you notice different surroundings. This is a little bit more used to what you're going to be seeing from now on, but not completely settled yet. So for now, we are in a slightly different format than I would like, but this is what we got for right now. But so, and obviously in the post-presidency, you want to reflect on your time as the president because so much is going on, so much is called on you. And sometimes, some people are just not gifted writers. and they might be, as far as writing goes, they might be best for like writing laws or writing speeches, writing complex papers and things, but not really prone to be able to write a story, because obviously that's a whole different skill set. Because when you're writing a story, it all has to flow, it all has to agree, and it has to be engaging. When you're writing a speech, obviously has to be engaging and has to flow. But when you're giving a speech, I mean, there are a lot of people that have made stories into speeches. And I know I've done that myself. But when you're writing a speech, you tend to be more explanatory. While when you're writing a book, you're being more descriptive. You definitely would go into more detail in writing a book than you would in writing a speech. Because when you're writing a speech, you don't have to describe situations. You don't have to describe the conditions around you. When you're writing a book, you need to be able to give an idea to the reader, to be able to visualize in their own mind the setting around them, the people, how they're dressed, the colors, what the weather is like, and all that. When Lincoln stepped up to do the Gettysburg Address, when he talked about being gathered here on this hallowed ground, he didn't say, we're here in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, in Adams County, approximately 10 miles north of the Maryland border, the Mason-Dixon line. It is an open field of grass with trees running along the edge. See, that's too descriptive for a speech. But for a book, that's perfect, because you want to be able to let the reader visualize what they're seeing. So with that in mind, you have politicians who are maybe good speech writers, but can't really write a book, so that's why they need ghostwriters. Now, let me just check to see. All right, currently on Twitter, no new questions there. And on Facebook, currently no new questions there. Okay. So, of course, all this comes with writing a speech. Of course, Donald Trump, the Republican nominee, will be speaking tonight in a short while. And Trump is not one who's known for writing a speech even. He tends to prefer to speak off the cuff, to have a sort of certain authenticity by being able to just go on subjects, although a lot of them can be described as rambling, described as sort of, I'm trying to think of a good word for it, obfuscating, things that can, try to not necessarily draw attention. So lately, he's been, ever since his campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, came on, he's had a lot more written speeches, and obviously he will be giving a written speech tonight. And you don't give a speech accepting your party's nomination off the cuff. That's totally unacceptable, because obviously Donald Trump is comfortable in front of a large audience, and this is going to be the largest audience he's had to deal with, both in the arena and on television. But I think he'd be perfectly fine with being able to speak off the cuff. But I think that would drive his campaign, the people that work for his campaign, absolutely insane if he didn't read from his speech. Because obviously what happened was, like last night, you had Senator Ted Cruz speak. And Ted Cruz was given a 10-minute window to speak. The speech that he turned over to the Republican Party, to the Republican National Committee to review, would take 9 minutes to read. Cruz spoke for 23 minutes. So he kept to his prepared speech, but he went on tangents, and he would make pauses, and he'd do more explanatory things and expand on certain points. And of course, making the point of how he wasn't endorsing Trump. That's really the big thing about it. But the fact that he sort of took much double hit the time that he was expected, and really made himself the story, has caused a lot of backlash today, because last night was supposed to be the night for the vice presidential nominee, Governor Mike Pence of Indiana. Now, obviously, if you guys are watching this, you're not You're probably not really interested in political stuff, but I'm just talking about, I'm bringing this up because of it is in the news right now, and it's all about writing. And then whether it be writing a speech or writing a story, it's all about getting it out there and getting exactly what you want to say there. Now, other things that are in the news, today specifically, we were sharing about, let's see, where is, let's see, if you're a fan of the Divergent book series, the next movie is no longer going to be a movie. It's going to be a television event. So obviously they haven't been doing as well in the theaters as they had hoped. They were trying, obviously, ever since Harry Potter, everyone's been trying, all the major movie studios have been trying to pull every book series imaginable out to put on the screen. Well, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Chronicles of Narnia only made it 3 movies in, although they're now recasting to hopefully make the 4th movie the Silver Chair. Then you have the Divergent series, the Twilight series, 50 Shades of Grey series, and just other ones like, Maze Runner and the Sports Trials, that series. Hunger Games, obviously they turned 3 books into 4 movies there, but it seemed to work pretty well, splitting the last book into 2 movies. Just as splitting the 7th Harry Potter book into 2 movies seemed to work well. Now, other things in the news, happy birthday to Ernest Hemingway. Obviously, he's no longer with us, but still, it's his birthday. Here's important news we're at about today. World Reader. It's a charity that we fully support here at aois21. We help primarily support them through the charity giving program through SurveyMonkey. World Readers are a partner on that, and we've done charity donations to them otherwise. But World Reader, its sole purpose is trying to take and get e-readers into the hands of children in third world countries and kids that don't have access to libraries, don't have proper schooling. So at least they get them an e-reader, and then they can provide them with thousands of free ebooks. And so they can really get these kids interested in reading and get them into science and math and music and art and basically everything that's out there. So how could you not support a charity that does something like that? So World Reader just announced that they are launching a new app called Read to Kids. And just to quote what they say here, as part of its Read to Kids educational program, it launched the app to help parents and teachers tell stories to children below 6 years of age. It will also inculcate the habit of listening and improve oratory skills, apart from motivating them to read. And they can currently be downloaded free of cost from Google Play Store. So just from Google Play. I don't know if it's on iOS for Apple devices yet. It doesn't look like it is. But here, the pilot project is the first release is in New Delhi in India, where they are working with 150 schools in South Delhi Municipal Corporation. They'll be using the app and helping to expand on it, because one thing that's great about e-readers, when you have an e-reader, you could have thousands of books up there, and the e-reader doesn't get any bigger. While if you have thousands of books on a bookshelf, like the one I have behind me that currently is lacking both books and shelves, those thousands of books takes up a lot of space. So being able to have an e-reader and give that to young children and have them be able to go out there and really get energized by reading, that is absolutely priceless. And it's all part of education. And education is the absolute most important thing for making sure children get an education, because you become more responsible. You may be smart, but you can become smarter because you can learn how to use your intelligence and your talents and your inclinations to your own benefit. If you're good with numbers, but you never really get that far in math, you may be missing out on the fact that you could be a calculus genius, or you could be an accountant that does wonderful things with numbers, and just everything just looks right. And, the career opportunities ahead of people that are really good at math are astounding, just as much as the people that are really good at science, whether they be chemists or biologists or physicists. It's all the options are out there that they may not know if they don't get a good education. You could like mixing things together. Well, does that make you a chemist or does that make you a cook? You may end up being a cook, but you really should be a chemist. But because you didn't get the proper education, you're being held back. So that's why we support charities like World Reader. We also support the Library of Congress Child Care Association. And this year we organized a team to walk for the Alzheimer's Foundation Walk to End Alzheimer's here on the National Mall on October 8th. So if you're in the DC area and are as really motivated as we are to wanting to help end the scourge that is Alzheimer's disease, then we have a team. We're having our staff and our creative sign up for it, but welcome others as well. Or if you don't want to walk, you don't have time to walk, you're going to be out of town that weekend, that's fine, because we can gladly take your donations. We're trying to raise, I know personally, I kept my goal low, only at $100. This is the first year that we've done the team thing, so we kept our goal low. I think it's only about $2,000. So you can please donate. Hopefully we can reach that goal and be able to get out there on October 8th and walk, and help. That money can go to important work at the Alzheimer's Foundation to hopefully lead to a cure. There's been a lot of things, a lot of tests and a lot of breakthroughs in the past few years, a variety of diseases. Hopefully Alzheimer's can be one of them. And I've lived with family members who have been suffering from that disease. I even have had coworkers that have had to dealt with it as well. And it is an absolutely brutal thing. And no one should have to suffer like that. No one. So we're going to walk and do what we can to help. So be sure to check that out. And of course, now all this comes back to is the stories. World Reader puts stories into the hands of children that may not have access to them. The Library of Congress Child Care Center, it's all about education and reading, learning. Alzheimer's Foundation, it's all about remembering the stories. When my grandfather was suffering from Alzheimer's in the early days, he would often tell some of the same stories over and over again, and I'm so mad at myself that I didn't get him to just talk and write them down. When I've had other members of the family, mine or my wife's family, going through the same troubles, we've done video interviews, I've written things down, we've tried to get them to write things down so those stories aren't lost. Because the stories are so important. The stories are our lives. The stories are what makes everything go. You read these stories, you see what others have gone through, and you try to build off of it. You have your family, you try to grow. So, all right, I see by the clock it's 9 o'clock. Unfortunately, we only had a couple viewers off and on Periscope. The only question we got was really not the best, but every once in a while we get one that's not the best. Yeah, last month I think I had a rather lewd one coming towards the end as well. So this video will be posted on YouTube. You'll be able to watch it anytime from now on, including ones from past months as well. So be sure to check that out. In fact, I got to make sure to check because I know last month I think the audio cut out about 10 minutes in. I've been able to see by the green light showing up that my audio is being broadcast now. Hopefully the people, anyone watching, will be able to listen to what I say. If not, I'll try to back up the file off of Periscope. So, all right, thank you very much for watching. For aois21 Publishing, I am Keith F. Shovlin, Publisher and Chief Creative. Be sure to check us out. We have aois21.com. Check out any one of our 12 great creatives or any of our great 14 books. We also have 5 podcast series. The monthly Publish Me podcast, which I host with author Paul Dickinson Russell. The poetry podcast series, Passion on the Page. We're going to have We're at a small delay. The next episode will be out this coming Monday. We have a weekly podcast I host called Literally This Week, going over the news of the literary world for the previous week. So some of the stories I talked about in this will be covered again in that. Not as much detail and not as much as far as suiting the discussion here. And then we also have a news commentary that will be coming out on the first of the month called The World's Only Podcast with Ian Roberts and Joshua Silverman. And then we have a sexuality podcast, which just had its most recent episode come out yesterday, called Sex, Vex, Perplexed with the Modern Whore by aois21 creative Eileen Vega. And it just transitioned from being a monthly podcast to being a bi-weekly one. So the episode came out yesterday. Next one will be out 2 weeks from yesterday. So Wednesday, August 3rd. Be on the lookout for that one. So we'll have, wow, a lot bunched in right there. So you have this coming Monday, which is the 25th. You'll have Literally This Week. You'll have Passion on the Page. Following week, you'll have another Literally This Week. Plus, you'll have the World's Only Podcast on the 1st. Then on the 3rd, you'll have Sex, Vex, Perplexed. Then on the 7th, you'll have Publish Me. And then, of course, there'll be another Literally This Week, as it all keeps going. So be sure to check that out, this and other web series as well, media.aois21.com, and our YouTube channel, youtube.com/aois21pub. Thank you all for watching. Have a good one, and keep reading.